Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to the 7th Grand Prix of the 2026 Formula 1 season. A week after the chaos in Monaco, we are here in Spain for the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix of 2026. A new name, obviously, for this Grand Prix. Usually, this race here in Catalonia is the Spanish Grand Prix, and you may be wondering when you look at the title of my stream, Jazz, why have you titled this Grand Prix as that? Well, that is now the official name of this Grand Prix. The Spanish Grand Prix is now for the Madrid race, which makes sense because the Madrid race is now permanently on the calendar for the next, 10 years or so. This race, I don't know if it's next year or the year after, it's going to be alternating between Spa in terms of being once every couple years on the calendar. So, yeah, this is the official new name of this Grand Prix, the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix. Of course, everybody calls this Barcelona, this Grand Prix, even though it is nowhere near Barcelona. I've been to this Grand Prix physically in person before, and yeah, it's not that far from Barcelona, but it's not, it's not really that close in terms of being a proper Barcelona Grand Prix like we used to have back in the 70s, where there was actually a street circuit race that we had on the calendar back in the, I think, early to mid 70s. But it's like calling, and to be honest, I think it's probably applicable. It would be like calling the British Grand Prix at Silverstone the London Grand Prix, given that Silverstone is only an hour north of London, if that. It's a similar type of situation to this one. But yeah, here we are for the Grand Prix in Catalonia. It is very hot, as it usually is, of course, in Spain this time of year, but a tad hotter than expected. It is well over 30 degrees Celsius at the circuit, and tomorrow it's going to be, I think, 35 degrees Celsius. Track temperature today and tomorrow going to be over 50 degrees Celsius. So it is, going to be a very hot one. Tyres are really the talking point of the weekend so far. Pirelli have brought softer tyres this weekend than they did last year. And because of how hot it is this weekend, looks like in tomorrow's race it's going to be at least a 2-stop, if not a 3-stop race. So that should be interesting. But in regards to qualifying today, it's, you're not going to see what we've seen so many times this season, where drivers are able to do more than one lap on the same tyre. It's going to be one lap per tyre, because the tyres are just giving up so quickly around this circuit. After the first couple sectors, the tyres are good, but as usual here, in that final sector, keeping the tyres alive to complete and do your best lap is really a challenge for the drivers this weekend. It's always been that way. If you go watch races even back in the groove tyre era, the early to mid 2000s, it was a big thing here, keeping the tyres alive in that final sector. But this weekend, given how soft the tyres are, it's quite an issue that we've seen so far in the running in Spain. But yeah, hello to all you guys. Hope you're all doing well after the last Grand Prix in Monaco. And I hope you'll be joining me today in watching along and enjoying qualifying from Catalonia. Hopefully should be a good one. We've had some good quali sessions here in the last few years, and I think today will be not as good as Monaco, but it will still be a good one to an extent. So yeah, looking forward to it. And as you can see, just about an hour and 25 minutes to go until we're underway for qualifying. And yeah, no matter what time zone you guys are in, what part of the world you're from, I hope you're all doing as well as possible, given whatever circumstances you may be going through. And I hope that, you can join me today and again, enjoying this session. And of course, we'll be going through our usual build up to qualifying, looking at the data so far this weekend, looking at practice 2, and looking at really just where the field is at, what the pecking order is. We'll get into the sector time data as well to really understand why certain teams are quick, where they're quick, and where other teams are really losing out. We'll get into that soon enough. And of course, I'll give my predictions as to what I think will probably happen in this qualifying session coming up soon. So yeah, we'll be getting into that. And of course, another thing I need to get into in a moment is the championship standings. Because if you didn't know, after the Monaco Grand Prix, Pierre Gasly had his third place reinstated. So instead of finishing in 7th, Pierre Gasly had his third place reinstated for now. And the reason I say for now is because now McLaren have lodged a right to appeal the result of the race, and I think Red Bull are going to do that as well. So we might get more changes to the result of the Monaco Grand Prix yet. But at the minute, Pierre Gasly has that podium finish. What a drive, what a result. He was magnificent in Monaco. He really, I thought, showed once again why, when he's at his best, he is one of the top, say, 8, 9 drivers in Formula One. No doubt about it. He's a magnificent driver, especially when he's in form. And we'll see if he does keep that result. But yeah, I'll get into what the updated championship standings are in just a moment. One more thing I wanted to say is, of course, there is a poll running, guys. As usual, in the chat, let me know in that poll between now and the start of Q3 in a couple hours' time. Who do you think will take pole position today? And the options in the poll are either the 2 Mercedes or 2 McLaren drivers, because it does appear, after the running so far this weekend, that it is going to be Mercedes versus McLaren in the fight for the front 3, not front 3, front 4 grid spots, really. So, out of those 4 drivers in that poll, Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, out of those 4, who do you think takes pole position for the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix? Of course, last year, it was Oscar Piastri taking pole, and then Lando Norris took pole 2 years ago. So 2 years in a row for McLaren taking pole here. Mercedes have not had pole position here in Barcelona since 2021, where Lewis Hamilton brilliantly won that race by doing an extra pit stop, if you remember, and then eventually passing Max Verstappen right before the end of the race. So yeah, let me know in that poll, who do you think is going to be taking what is one of the most important pole positions of a Formula One season here in Spain? The rate of pole position to victory here at this track is very, very high. I think it's 91%. So yeah, it's a very, very important one, and it could be for the championship as well. But talking of the championship standings, let's get into the updated standings. So the front 4 is as it was or is after Monaco. Kimi Antonelli is 66 points clear of Lewis Hamilton in 2nd, George Russell 3rd, Leclerc 4th. Piastri has still overtaken Norris for 5th, but now they're level on points as opposed to Piastri being 2 points ahead. Max Verstappen is 7th. Pierre Gasly is now 8th in the championship, ahead of Isaac Hadjar. It was actually Hadjar ahead of Gasly, but because of the reinstating of Gasly's podium, Gasly is now 8th in the championship. What a season Gasly and Alpine really are having. They've been brilliant. I knew they were going to have a good car this season, but I think they really delivered a lot more than I was expecting in 2026 so far. Isaac Hadjar, though, in ninth, at least getting into the top 10 of the championship. And then Liam Lawson is still in the top 10 of the Drivers' World Championship. He was initially in ninth place when Gasly, had finished, according to the stewards in Monaco, in seventh. But after the reinstation of Gasly's podium, Lawson drops to 10th. But still, what a season Lawson is having to be in the top 10 of the championship. On the constructors' side, Mercedes about 80 points clear of Ferrari, McLaren then in third, Red Bull in fourth, Alpine only 19 points behind Red Bull. Red Bull you would expect to pull away quite a lot in the next few races, but just shows you how great Alpine have been. 50 points scored after, 6 races? I think they only scored probably 50 or 60 points in the last 2 seasons before this. So, again, it just shows you how great of a season they've had. This is by far the best season Alpine have had since at least 2023. They have been really, I think, almost every weekend maximizing really the package they've got. And, both drivers, thankfully, have been really showing good speed and getting, obviously, Colapinto's had a couple great results lately as well. So yeah, what a season they're having. Racing Bulls, though, also an amazing season, given I don't think really anyone expected them to be doing that much this season, yet they are 6th in the championship on 35 points. Haas, 7th. Williams, 8th. Audi, 9th, and nearly 10 points behind Williams. I don't think anyone expected them to be that far behind Williams in the championship after the first 6 races, given where Audi were at the start of the season compared to Williams. Aston Martin are now up to 10th, obviously scored a point in Monaco. And Cadillac last in the championship, and you obviously would expect Cadillac to finish last in the championship. But I still believe that Cadillac will score a point this season. We had a very chaotic race in Monaco. We will have some more chaotic races this year, and that Cadillac is getting better all the time, so I'm not counting them out from maybe being able to overtake Aston Martin in the championship. But yeah, those are the updated championship standings after that reinstating of Gasly's podium. But again, McLaren and Red Bull are appealing the result now of the Monaco Grand Prix, so it might change around again. If it does, I'll update the standings and let you guys know what the new standings are whenever we get a change to that result. But let's get into the data from this weekend as we look ahead to qualifying here in Catalonia. McLaren have been the standout team this weekend. Not necessarily are they the quickest team, but they have been the team that's really grabbed the headlines because of just how quick they have been and how competitive they look. I am not surprised that they are looking a bit quicker than they were in Monaco. I mean, they're way quicker than they were in Monaco so far. They were always going to be quicker here than they were in Monaco. So that's not a surprise. What is a surprise is them being comfortably, quite a bit clearer of Ferrari and Red Bull and actually looking about on the same level as Mercedes-Benz. That is very surprising. I thought McLaren, I thought they would be, again, better than they were in Monaco. I thought they would be better than Ferrari, so that's not a surprise, but I didn't think they would be as close, anywhere near as close to Red Bull as they have been this weekend. I still thought they'd be a few tenths of a second away. But credit to them. They've had a great weekend. They've looked super quick, really from first practice. Lando Norris topping practice 2 on a 1:15.4, which is still the fastest lap time we've seen this weekend. In practice 3, I think it was a 1:15.6 that Russell did as he topped practice 3. So, Yeah, 1:15.4, the best lap time so far. George Russell only slightly slower than that. Oscar Piastri in third, only half a tenth off. So good to see both McLaren drivers very competitive. Then a bit of a drop off, just a bit, to Charles Leclerc in fourth. Nearly 4 tenths off the pace. Ferrari have actually brought quite a big upgrade package this weekend to the front wing, the floor. I think it's 8 different upgrade parts, new parts they brought, and quite frankly, I don't think they're really that much closer here than they would have been beforehand. Maybe they're a couple tenths better off, but yeah, I'm not really seeing anything from the Ferrari to suggest that those upgrades have actually moved them significantly forward. The big upgrade they're still waiting for is the engine upgrade, which we are still hearing might be coming at the next race in Austria. And that really could turn their season around if it gives them a lot more performance, but we'll have to see what happens there. But from the upgrade, the aerodynamic upgrade they've had here, again, I haven't seen anything to suggest that they've significantly improved. Obviously, qualifying is where we legitimately find out who has the pace. So maybe they've been hiding their pace. I hope they have. But yeah, I'm not enthused by what I've seen so far from Ferrari. I think at best, they are looking to be probably fifth on the grid for this race, which is just not good enough from their perspective. Antonelli in fifth. Antonelli, we do need to add some context in terms of the weekend he's had so far. Firstly, he didn't do practice one because a load of young drivers stepped in to quite a few cars in practice one, and Antonelli had to, or not had to, but he had his car driven by Frederick Vesti. I call Vesti a young driver, but he's actually older than Antonelli. Vesti did practice one, so Antonelli not getting as much track time in Friday practice running as teammate Russell, who topped practice one and then was very close to topping practice two. And then in practice three, Antonelli was slower than Russell, but Antonelli had a lot of traffic on what should have been his final run or two in practice three, and was moaning quite a bit about it on the radio when he came back to the pits right before the end of the session. So it really hasn't gone to plan yet for Antonelli, but it's not really because of anything he's done, if you know what I mean. Once we get to Q3, a lot less cars on track, much less chance of, encountering traffic on a fast lap. If he can just keep it together like he has done these last few races and, dial himself in, lock in, then I don't see why he can't be ahead of Russell and be on pole position. But George Russell is looking definitely more competitive this weekend than he was in Monaco. So if it is a Mercedes front row, say for this session, it's going to be close. No doubt about it. And either Mercedes driver could end up on pole. It's going to be interesting to see who wins that battle. Max Verstappen in sixth. Red Bull also brought an upgrade to the chassis, which Max Verstappen has said will really show if the car has improved in the high-speed corners. And yeah, Max has not been happy this weekend. Even in practice three, he set a lap towards the end of the session and was shaking his head. The Red Bull, not as quick here as I expected it to be. They're about 2 to 3 tenths of a lap slower than I was expecting. So, yeah, it looks like their fight is more so with Ferrari for, say, between 5th and 8th place, which is disappointing, but not exactly a massive surprise. Red Bull still have issues with the aero / chassis of, their car. It's not a massive surprise that they are having issues. But we'll see what Max can do in qualifying. But again, like Ferrari, P5 looks like it's probably the best result realistically that they can get in qualifying. Arvid Lindblad 7th. Racing Bulls yesterday were very quick, which really is a surprise. I didn't think they would be that quick here, to be honest. I wasn't expecting them to be, right in the thick of it, but they absolutely are. Lindblad in 7th, and Lawson had I think a gearbox problem in practice too. He broke down midway through the session. He was in the top 10 before everybody went onto the soft tyres in the latter part of practice too. So yeah, both Racing Bulls look competitive, so watch out for them. Bortoletto then in 8th, Audi looking competitive as well, but again, can they actually deliver the pace when it matters? That's the problem with Audi, is delivering when it actually matters. They've got potential, but it's about delivering on that potential eventually. Lewis Hamilton 9th. Hamilton's had a bad weekend, but I'm not sure it's necessarily because of him. He was complaining about the rear end of his car dragging along the straight, and on board in practice too, the rear end of his car did look like it had some sort of fundamental issue. And yeah, not really that much better in practice 3. So it feels more like setup issues for Hamilton. But still time to improve. Obviously, when we get to qualifying, that'll be when the Parc Ferme comes into effect. So there's still time, another hour, to get the setup right for the teams. So there is still time for Lewis Hamilton to improve that setup enough so he can be at least competitive with his teammate. Because so far this weekend, Leclerc has been comfortably ahead of Hamilton. And then in P10, Isaac Hadjar, not really a surprise with him in P10, given that Max, his teammate, was in 6th. The only thing maybe you could have expected is maybe for him to be ahead of Hamilton. But yeah, Red Bull just not as competitive, sadly, as as I was expecting, and I think as quite a few people were expecting coming into this weekend. But yeah, that's the top 10 from practice 2. Let me just go through, though, the rest of the order from the second practice session. So Hulkenberg in 11th. That's his favourite position this season. He's been in 11th so many times this year. Oliver Behrman 12th. Lawson 13th. Like I said, Lawson had a gearbox issue. Did nearly 20 laps less than a lot of the other drivers. Carlos Sainz 14th. Colapinto 15th. Gasly 16th. Ocon 17th. Valtteri Bottas 18th. Bottas has looked a lot more with it this weekend, but he did have a really big brake problem in practice 3, where, according to him, the brake pedal just, I don't know if it snapped off or just completely went, but yeah, his brakes completely went in practice 3, and he had to essentially deliberately drive himself into the gravel to get the car stopped. So not great there. Alex Albon 19th. Albon has been complaining a lot about the setup, and Williams, not really a surprise they're slow here. This is a track that exposes their flaws really quite badly. Sergio Perez 20th, Alonso 21st, and Stroll 22nd. And yes, Aston Martin still the slowest team, even around a track that is not entirely about aero, because you do have some flat out sections, but that Aston Martin car is just completely dreadful. For certain teams, though, who ended up outside the top 10, Haas looking decent, but I still expect more from them around this type of circuit. Williams, again, not really a surprise. This is just not a good track for them. Alpine, though, really, I am expecting more from them. This is not the greatest circuit for them. this type of configuration, but they should not be half a second pretty much off the pace of the top 10. That they should be a lot closer than that. So I think Alpine, we can definitely expect improvement. And then Cadillac at the back, looking quite clearly quicker than Aston Martin. So that's your results from practice team. Let's get into the sector time data just to understand why or where certain teams are quick. So here's the first sector from practice 2. First sector, though, is by far, like Monaco, it's the least important sector. What it does show, though, is great, say, straight line speed plus that great high-speed cornering performance. A slight bit of that plus with, or combined with great straight line speed really will give you a great speed in this first sector. And Mercedes and the two best Mercedes powered teams, no surprise, at the front in this sector, but Mercedes, especially in sector 1, have been really comfortably the best team. And they were a tenth and a bit quicker than McLaren. Red Bull, despite having, according to the FIA, the best power unit on the grid, still a quarter of a second off. So still work to do there for Red Bull. Racing Bulls, very quick in the first sector. We have seen, though, at high speed, that Racing Bulls car is very good. But fourth quickest in the first sector is quite surprising. So congrats to Racing Bulls having such a quick car through there. And then Ferrari, fifth quickest and 3/10 off the pace after just the first sector. And you can see with Ferrari, because of the lack of power that engine has and the lack of straight line speed overall the car has, around a track like this where, having really good grip does matter, you also need to combine that with really good straight line speed. And for Ferrari, if you're giving away 3/10 in the first sector alone, you're giving yourself such a mountain to climb for the rest of the lap, where for the rest of the lap, you need to have such an amazing pace to even be competitive in the fight for pole. So that's really where the lack of power compared to the Mercedes power teams and the Red Bull powertrains as well, that's really where the lack of power is costing them dearly. Because in this first sector, if they had an engine that was as competitive as the Mercedes, I think they'd be at least a couple tenths closer, maybe within half a tenth or so. Because that first sector is pretty simple. So, it really is costing them dearly. And like I said in my podcast after the Monaco Grand Prix, until they get an engine upgrade, we can't talk about Ferrari at all as a legitimate race-winning contender, never mind championship contender, because until they get that engine upgrade that gives them at least 2 or 3 tenths more performance per lap, they just don't have what it takes, unfortunately, to compete at the very front, which again is a shame because that chassis is a very good one. Alpine, decent first sector. Williams, not too bad. And then you got Haas. Audi, surprisingly quite slow in the first sector, despite having a decent engine, I would say. But also does show you how good their car is through the corners, given that they're 9th quickest in the first sector and still one of the quickest midfield teams. And then you got Cadillac, only slightly quicker than Aston Martin. But the middle sector, this is the part of the lap that really shows you who has the best aero/chassis package. And no surprise, Ferrari are the quickest team by only 0.016 of a second, so it's still close. But again, Ferrari in those medium and slow speed corners, fantastic car. But in the high speed stuff, They're just not on the same level as the Mercedes-powered teams. But yeah, slightly quicker than McLaren. Mercedes only a tenth off. Red Bull 3/10 off. Just shows you again that the chassis just isn't still up to the standard they need on that Red Bull. Racing Bulls, though, very impressive speed from them. Only a few hundredths slower than the main Red Bull team. Audi looking a lot better. Haas a bit better. Alpine, bit of a drop off for them, and also for Williams. Not really surprised, Williams, so far down. One thing I need to mention, though, is at the bottom there, Cadillac being 4.5 tenths quicker than Aston Martin in the middle sector. If you're Aston Martin, how pathetic is your car? Nearly half a second slower than Cadillac in just the middle sector, which is full of corners. Again, how have you built a car this horrendous? Not only half a second pretty much slower than Cadillac, 1 second slower than the Racing Bulls in just the middle sector. I just cannot believe, still at this point of the season, that they are this bad. And I don't think there is any doubt at this point, given all the money and resources they've got. This is the worst car we've ever seen. No doubt about it. Because even at this point of the year, for them to be this far off the pace in all areas is just astounding, quite frankly. And then we come to the final sector, and from Ferrari's perspective, again, at high speed, just giving away too much time. McLaren, though, looking very good in the final sector. McLaren, in the final sector, that's where the McLaren is at its best. 10th of a second quicker than the Mercedes. Ferrari, though, again, quarter of a second off. That, again, you can't give away 2 tenths, 3 tenths here and there in the high-speed sections, despite having such a fast car in the middle part of the lap, because, you're not going to be competitive enough to fight even for a podium. Audi, pretty competitive in the final sector. Red Bull still giving away way too much time. 4 tenths of a second alone to McLaren. So a lot of work to do there for Red Bull. Racing Bulls, decent pace. Williams a bit better. And then Alpine, Haas. Cadillac, not too bad. Only a couple tenths slower than the Haas team. Obviously powered by Ferrari as well. And then again, Cadillac, 4 tenths off. Or not Cadillac, sorry, Aston Martin, 4 tenths off Cadillac. Just abysmal from them. Aston Martin, compared to Cadillac, if Cadillac do their absolute best lap and Aston Martin do their absolute best lap, Cadillac are, 8 tenths of a second per lap quicker than Aston Martin? That's ridiculous. At that point, Cadillac are going to end up nearly a lap ahead of Aston Martin. It is just, again, ridiculous how bad they are. But overall for the lap, I would say Mercedes, because of that first sector and the consistent pace really through all the parts of the lap, the Mercedes, I think, just about is the fastest car. It's not by a lot, though. We're talking hundredths of a second between them and McLaren. But Mercedes, I think I would have to give just about the edge because of especially that first sector pace they've got. So, yeah, Mercedes, I would say, have the best car. But again, only by a very small margin. No doubt, though, this weekend, Mercedes' closest competitor is McLaren. Red Bull and Ferrari just don't have the pace. McLaren are the ones to take on Mercedes this weekend. And if anyone can beat Mercedes, it will be McLaren. But McLaren, I think for qualifying, just that slight bit too far behind. But I do think if McLaren, even if they are 3rd and 4th on the grid, given how normally they've got a good race car and race pace is going to be so important tomorrow, looking after your tyres obviously will be very important as well. And then we know the McLaren, last couple of years or so is great at that. If they can keep themselves on pace close to Mercedes, they very well could win tomorrow's race. I mean, if they're going to win, really, they need a car on the front row, but even from third and fourth, I wouldn't say it's impossible. But yeah, Mercedes versus McLaren, that's what it is, really, for the front four positions and in terms of the fight for pole position. Third quickest team, I think is probably Ferrari, but I think Red Bull are close enough. I don't think Red Bull have quite maximised, no pun intended, their package this weekend. I think there's more in that Red Bull that hasn't been shown yet. So I think Red Bull are close enough to where Max can out-qualify the Ferrari cars. But I would say Ferrari are just a slight bit ahead of Red Bull. So, Ferrari third, Red Bull fourth. Fifth, probably Racing Bulls. I think it'll be a bit closer with Audi than it was in practice. Watch out for that battle. And then after those two teams, you're looking at what? Either Haas or Alpine, seventh best team. I'd probably lean towards Alpine because I think Alpine have got more potential than what they've shown. Haas, though, keep your eye on them because Oliver Behrman has looked decent at times this weekend. Keep your eye on them. And then after Alpine and Haas, I think, quite comfortably, ninth quickest is Williams, who are going to struggle really to get into even Q2. And then comfortably, 10th quickest is Cadillac, who are nearly, a second quicker than Aston Martin. So that's what I think the pecking order is. A pretty close pecking order, especially in the front few positions. And in regards to that, let's get into my prediction for qualifying, which is less than an hour away now. And here is how I think the top 10 will end up. Mercedes, I think, will lock out the front row, but it will be very close. Antonelli, I'm going to go for him as my pole position man, just about ahead of George Russell. I just think Antonelli's in better form. And even though this weekend he hasn't been as quick as Russell, when it matters, that's really what matters. And when it matters at the minute, Antonelli has been the much better performer under pressure. Antonelli, I'm going on pole, just about by a 10th head of Russell and Piastri. Lando Norris, I'm going then in fourth. And then, just about in fifth, Max Verstappen, ahead of the two Ferraris of Hamilton and Leclerc. Isaac Hadjar will be in eighth. Liam Lawson, I'm going in ninth. And Gabriel Bortoleto, I think, will take P10 for Audi. But it will be very close between the two Racing Bulls and Audi cars. So Lindblad and Hulkenberg absolutely can make the top 10. But there you go. That's my top 10 prediction. Let me know yours in the chat. Let me know who you think is going to take pole, what you think the top 3 is going to be. Let me know in the chat and we will get to your comments pretty soon. So there you go. 51 minutes remain until the session begins at a very hot circuit of Catalunya. And we'll get into your comments soon enough. Let me just have a quick drink for my throat, as it is quite hot and sunny here in my part of the UK. So, throat feeling a bit dry today. And that's a bit better. But, a couple things I did want to just get into is, firstly, I just wanted to give an update as to the plan content-wise, which I normally do every Grand Prix. So, if you didn't see my announcement in regards to what I'm doing for this weekend's Grand Prix, Obviously, I'm doing the qualifying watch along now, but there will not be a race watch along tomorrow. Couple reasons for that. One, I think Mercedes are going to win relatively comfortably. And also because I am absolutely hooked and mad on the World Cup, I don't think I can watch all the games and do the stream tomorrow. I just don't think it would be good for my health. So, given that I don't think tomorrow's race is really going to be that great, that's why I'm not doing a race watch along. But there will be a podcast, of course, as usual, on Monday, where I review whatever happens in the race itself. So, and then between this Grand Prix and the next one in Austria, after that podcast is uploaded on Monday, there won't be any content on the channel until we get to qualifying day at the Red Bull Ring. One thing I can announce for you guys who do obviously love when we do race watch-alongs, very likely that we will do a race watch-along for the next one in Austria, so don't worry. It's very likely that that will happen at the next race in Austria, which I'm looking forward to. So, yeah, good chance that that returns there. And then, of course, a week after the Austrian Grand Prix is the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. So, I'd say there's a pretty decent chance we'll be doing both a qualifying and race watch along for both those weekends. So, yeah, there'll be more streams coming your way between now and the end of the British Grand Prix weekend. British Grand Prix is in 3 weeks from now. But another thing I wanted to get into was a gigantic, from my heart, thank you. Because this stream today is officially the 1000th video that I have done on this channel. And again, from the bottom of my heart, massive thank you to all of you who have subscribed, liked, supported the channel, supported me personally through, the highs, the lows, especially the lows. Some of you will know that I was very low. 5-6 years ago, I was in a very tough spot. And here we are on the other side of it. And in terms of my life, since then, my life is much better since then. And I'm happy that I'm still here. So, yeah, I'm so grateful for all of your support over the years. And, we started this channel. It was just after the British Grand Prix of 2018, I think it was when I started the channel. And the first Grand Prix we actually covered was a 2018 German Grand Prix, and a famous Grand Prix, of course. That's where Vettel went off track. That classic moment. That was the first race watch along we ever did on this channel, which set us up nicely going forward. But yeah, just again, a massive thank you to all of you. To my moderator, Rooksfoot. Without you, I don't know where I'd be, in regards to the job you do, keeping everything together. Again, massive thank you to you for all the work you've done. And anyone who's moderated for the channel in the past. We had, I think years ago, we had Tonka. I think some of you guys may remember him. Don't know what he's up to now. I haven't heard from him in years, to be honest. But yeah, I hope he's doing well. But massive thank you to him for the support that he gave, and also what he did moderating. And to anyone who's been a moderator, again, massive thank you for your help and support. Another, though, gigantic thank you to the man who has joined me on commentary for so many years on these watch-alongs, obviously the race watch-alongs, and we've done, I think, the odd qualifying watch-along as well, and that is Niblo. Again, massive thank you to him. I don't know if he's listening. Obviously, I do chat to him quite frequently. A good friend. And yeah, again, a massive thank you to him for all the support personally, but as well with the channel. Because, he obviously, with the time zone he's in, he doesn't have to make the sacrifices that he does coming on stream and, you know, towards midnight or the middle of the night. He doesn't have to do any of that, but he does. So a massive thank you to him for all the support and the help that he's given the channel and to me. So yeah, massive thank you, mate, if you are listening. Um, and to all of you, if you've only just joined the channel as a subscriber, viewer, only in 2026, or if you've been watching for years, thank you all, and I have to thank each and every one of you for all of your fantastic support, and especially the long time regulars, Astro Stevo, who's now known as Platty, I think it is, obviously Rooks, Serugara, Crystal Racing, Will, there's so many of you, Super Kev. I'm sure I'm missing out another few names. On another big one who really has been a big supporter of mine, Count Blah. Don't know if he's listening, but big shout out to you. He's donated to the channel quite a few times, and he's been a viewer, I think, since the very start. So yeah, shout out to you, Count Blah. Darth Lord Raven. List goes on. If I've not mentioned your name, apologies, but there's just so many people, so many long-time regulars we've had here. I'll make sure to shout out your name if I read it in the chat. But there's so many of you, that have been around for years, and again, I appreciate every one of you and the support and all of that. So yeah, didn't think I'd ever make it to 1,000 videos / streams or content pieces, whatever you want to call it, on the channel. But here we are. And here is to the next 1,000. Obviously, at the minute, I'm doing a uni degree in screenwriting. I hope after the degrees I've already got, foundation degree and an honours degree in media studies, and hopefully I'll get a master's in screenwriting, which at the minute looks pretty likely. In terms of the exact grade, we'll see, but getting the masters looks pretty likely. In terms of what the future holds, who knows? Hopefully I'll be a screenwriter for some actual films or TV shows. I mean, obviously that's the dream, but you just never know. In the industry and just in this world, you just never know what's coming next. Unfortunately, uh, so we'll see. What happens with that, and long may this channel and the content continue. And one thing I can announce as well is, even though I'm doing my masters, and obviously I hope and I want to be a screenwriter, preferably. And, if I can work as one in the industry, get paid, all of that, that would be amazing and great. And, that's my ambition. But even if I do achieve that, I am still going to be doing content on this channel for at least the next, probably couple years. So, yeah, I'm not going anywhere quite yet. But again, massive thank you to all of you and all the support. Love you all. And here's to the next 1,000. It took us, 8 years to get here. Of course, I did have quite a big break in 2020 from content, so I probably would have got to this point a year and a half ago if I had kept going. But yeah, if we do get to 2,000 videos, it'll probably be in about what 7 or 8 years from now, which would be what 2034, something like that. So yeah, here's the next 1,000. Cheers to all of you. But let's get into your comments in the chat. And like I said, I will read out your any usernames that I forgot to mention. Yeah, Ronan Brady, that's another one. Thank you, mate. I know you've been you've been here for 8 years. Thank you very much. Let me just scroll up a bit, see if there's anyone else. Looney Classics, that's another one. Thank you so much. You've been around for quite a bit. Let me scroll up a bit further, see if there's anyone else. KH as well. You've, I think you're a newer one, but still you've been around a bit. Brabham as well. Massive shout out to you. You've been around for a long time. And yeah, if there's anyone else I forgot, apologies. But yeah, if you're watching, shout yourself out in the comments, and I'll give your name a shout out. Because yeah, massively appreciative of all the support. But let me just quickly read out a couple predictions before I read your very nice comments. As Ronan earlier said, hi Chaz, I haven't watched a single race yet this year, but back today. Since they made the engine improvements, it's picked up these last couple races. So you've joined definitely a much better time. Astro saying, thank you, Chaz. I love your channel and work here. Thanks a lot, mate. Let me just scroll up because I know you put in a prediction earlier, but I can't quite. There you go. Now I found it. Astro's predictions for the top 10. Piastri on pole, then Russell, Kimi, Lewis, Charles, Norris, Hadjar, Sainz, Albon, Lindblad, Hulk, 11th, because of course, indeed. And yes, Silverback, that's another guy. Yeah, Sarah Gara just mentioned. Yeah, he was a regular, wasn't he, for a long time. And who else? Vinster, that's another one. He's been around for a while. I'm sure he'll pop in, hopefully at some point, maybe a different stream. Vettel Hamilton says 3 years. I mean, I've been in this channel as well. Yeah, thanks to you. And yeah, whether you've been here for a couple years or so, or 5, 6 years, again, massively appreciative of all of you. Rona says, hi, Chaz. I hope you remember me. I've been since 2018 with lots of controversial opinions. Absolutely, I remember. Astro is saying, Miss Silverback, Vale, yep. I hope Crystal Racing is okay. Yeah, Dom Deng, that username, I'm pretty sure that is Crystal. And yeah, I think he joined us, was it a few weeks ago? The last time I saw him in the chat, but yeah, I don't think he's enjoying Formula One at the minute, which I can't blame him because it's still not quite where we want it to be. And obviously, he's been watching F1 way longer than I have, so he was watching it during its heyday. KH says, I hope Piastri gets pole. He's due for a win. Given how he's performed, he's definitely performed well enough to be getting it, but the car just hasn't quite been consistent enough for him. Obviously, did win this Grand Prix brilliantly a year ago. He was fantastic in last year's Spanish Grand Prix. Ronan saying, I think I've been proven right that Bottas is useless now. I cite 2024 and this year as examples. Yeah, Bottas, he's done. I mean, this weekend he's looking a lot better, which is good to see. But yeah, he's done. I don't know if I said it last weekend, but Bottas, he's not here for a long time. He's here for a good time. So yeah, it wouldn't be surprised, would it, if he gets replaced maybe later in the season or maybe next season. I think he will provide vital knowledge for Cadillac in regards to, setting the car up, technical feedback. But once they get much better in that area, I think, when they want to start really improving on the, or hiring drivers that are more competitive, I think, they're going to look to replace Bottas pretty soon. And there are options for them. Colton Herta did practice one for Cadillac. Um, and, there are obviously options in America that they could look at. Will saying, you said Bottas is on a jolly. Pretty much. I mean, when you look at him and just the way he's acting and presenting himself, I mean, he, like I said, he's not. I don't think he cares really at all about where he finishes. He's just trying to help this new team, bring them up to a higher level. Which, if he can help with that in regards to the feedback and helping, set the cars up properly, then that's great. But yeah, Bottas is beyond washed. I mean, we saw that in 2024. He was absolutely abysmal that year. The last good season Bottas had really was 2022, where he was actually quite good that season in the Alfa Romeo. But yeah, since 2023, he's been a clear shadow of himself. Cheers, Brabham, who says, thanks for all your hard work, Chaz. Thank you very much for that. Ronan says, I thought he was useless at 2018. Indeed, you have. But, I mean, looking back, I'm just going to post a link of the stream out whilst I say this. But, I mean, if you look at Valtteri Bottas's career, it's been a good one. Considering how good of a driver he is or was, the talent potential he had. It's been a good career. Let me just post this quick. Come here. Come join us here to watch along. Qualifying in Barcelona. And hopefully we'll get some more people hopping on. I will do a roundup of the team soon, as I usually do. Yeah, if you look at his time at Mercedes, I mean, could he have done any better than he did? Maybe 2018, that season, he wasn't great. I mean, he did have quite a lot of bad luck that year also. But, other than that year, maybe 2021, yeah, I don't think he really could have done any better. He was teammates with Hamilton, who was at his peak and is still, for me, the greatest we've ever seen. Has, quite a few race wins, did Bottas. Had some really great ones in Suzuka. Turkey was a great one. Had some fantastic pole positions. There are so many famous racetracks. Silverstone, Nürburgring, Imola. Trying to think what other tracks. Oh, this one in Catalonia. This one in Catalonia, I think was it 2019. He was absolutely amazing that weekend in qualifying. He was half a second clear of his teammate, who albeit didn't do a proper final run, I remember, in that session, but still, he was on fire. So, looking back, I don't think you can say, well, he could have done this. He did the best he could. He was a good, number two to Hamilton, complemented Hamilton well, pushed Hamilton hard enough to where Lewis, could maintain his amazing level that he did. And yeah, had a fantastic career. Valtteri, when he was younger, before he went to Mercedes, everyone, used to talk about him and hype him up because, he was a talented driver, talented young driver back then. But he was never a world champion level driver. He was on that second rung of drivers, him, say Valtteri Bottas, what am I about? Sergio Perez, Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, on that second level below your, at the times, say from the late 2010s, Hamilton, Vettel, Raikkonen, Verstappen, Ricciardo. He wasn't on that top level. So what he ended up achieving in his career, given the cars he drove, was pretty much the best he could have done. The only thing really I will say I think he could have maybe done is win a race in that Williams car in either 2014 or 2015. I think that's the only thing maybe missing from his career, but it was still pretty hard to win in that Williams, because it wasn't consistently there every weekend, right behind Mercedes when Mercedes had their, whatever problems on a certain weekend. But I think that's the only thing maybe missing from his career is a win in that Williams, which really would have, I think, showcased how good of a driver in his prime he was. Um, Astro saying Bottas was unstoppable in Melbourne in the first race a few years ago. He was. I mean, that was partly down to Lewis Hamilton having floor damage, but yeah, I remember that race, 2019. He won by about 20 seconds at Albert Park, and he did lead the Drivers' Championship for a brief time in that opening part of the season, and it was after the first four races, I want to say. He was the championship leader by like a point or something, or it was very close. I can't remember exactly. Obviously, he led it after the first race, but yeah. Again, looking at his career, I think he did the best he could have done. I don't think you could ask any more of him. Valtteri was not a Kimi Raikkonen or Mika Hakkinen level talent. He didn't have, even though he was very quick over a qualifying lap, he didn't have consistently the killer speed that Hakkinen had, and he didn't have the all-around amazing talent that Raikkonen had. Raikkonen was a generational talent for the country of Finland, in terms of just how all-round good he was in his prime. And the next Finnish driver after him was always going to struggle to get really that close to being, anywhere near as good as prime Kimi. So, yeah, I think Bottas did the best he could. Let me just scroll up a bit further, read a couple comments, and then we'll round up the teams before we get into qualifying. Kid Latin says, with Charles, honestly, I don't know why he signed with Ferrari to the end of time. Feels like the end of time. Is he going to win a champ? Is he even going to win a championship with someone else, or is he just continue wasting his time with Ferrari? The problem is we don't know how long his contract exactly is, or in terms of like when it comes to an end. It is believed that his contract has been extended by a couple years, but again, we didn't know in the first place when his contract was up. So, yeah, I'm not sure, really, the contract situation there, but let's say his contract was up at the end of, say, 2028. And if that was the case, then I do think it was the wrong decision to extend his contract by a couple years, because even though Ferrari, they've started these regulations, I'd say, well enough. They've got the foundations of a good car. They just need more power. And it is easier to improve on the engine side than it is on the downforce and chassis side. So from the downforce chassis side, they've got that nailed down. It's just, again, finding more power. How can they do that? Especially with these regulations in regards to the amount of developments you're allowed with the power units. You're only allowed really one big development per season with the engines if you are deemed to not have the biggest engine. So yeah, that's why Ferrari are in the position they are in now. But again, let's say his contract was originally up at the end of 2028. Why not just wait it out to see what seats become available? Because, for example, let me just clear my throat before I say this. At Mercedes, for example, who are the best team right now, there is no doubt about that. An opening very well could present itself for next season. Because if George Russell continues to perform as poorly as he has been in these last 2-3 races, if that continues that trend on for for most part the rest of the season, there's a good chance that Mercedes will drop Russell and replace him with another top driver. There's no guarantee, even though I think it will be Max Verstappen who replaces Russell at Mercedes. No guarantee that that will be the case, because Max, still, we have to remember, he's at Red Bull. If Red Bull can prove that they can build a fast enough car, then it's still a more favourable situation for Max to be in, because Red Bull is completely built around him. He's been at Red Bull his entire Formula One career. Red Bull is Max, and Max is Red Bull at the end of the day. So there very well could be reluctance from Verstappen to make the jump to Mercedes, which, again, I can understand. So if Mercedes decide to get rid of Russell and Verstappen doesn't want to go or isn't available, who's the next best option? Charles Leclerc. And Leclerc, at the end of the day, we don't know what the future holds in regards to who is going to be winning the championships in the next few years. Maybe Ferrari will win a championship in the next 2 or 3 years. We don't know. Who, McLaren have just come off 2 years in a row winning the Constructors' Championship. Nobody expected that. Especially, go and ask anyone in 2022 whether they thought McLaren were going to win a Constructors' Championship, within a couple years, and everyone would have said no. So who knows what the future holds? But what you, as a driver, will know is that right now, and at least probably for the next 18 months, Mercedes are going to have the best chance of providing a championship winning car for a racing driver. So why not position yourself so that you can maybe make the jump if Mercedes decide to go for you instead of Max Verstappen? Again, if Verstappen is unavailable for whatever reason, if he doesn't decide to go, or if he decides, to stay, or if Red Bull just won't let him out of his contract, or whatever. I don't get why he wouldn't at least wait. And then, you take away Mercedes, and then obviously you've got other teams. You've got McLaren, you've got Audi as well, which is a possibility. And I know Audi, at the minute they're not very good, but they're more of a project. Audi really, between now and say 2030, they're really just trying to build Audi the nucleus of a winning Formula One team. So that when we get to the next big set of new regulations, which looks like it'll be probably 2030, maybe 2031, hopefully by then Audi will then be a championship contending team. But again, why not wait a couple years and see how Audi develop? I just don't understand the decision to sign for another 2 years, because presumably his new contract now takes him up to probably the end of 2030, maybe the end of 2031. By the time we get to that point, then there's no guarantee that Ferrari will be the team to beat. Mercedes might dominate the next few years when Leclerc could have had the opportunity to make the jump to Mercedes. And also, you don't know with Audi, they might make a massive jump in the next couple years. And also, you've got McLaren. McLaren are very happy with their driver lineup, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, but there's no guarantee that they're going to keep keep that lineup. Piastri, I think, definitely could look to move on from that team in a couple years, because I think Oscar wants to be more so the leader of a team rather than the situation he's in at McLaren. So again, I just don't understand why he didn't at least just wait a bit closer to the end of his contract just to see how the driver market developed, because it could have opened up really nicely for him. But he's made his decision, and he has to live and die by it. But, if we get to the end of his contract, 2030, 2031, and Ferrari, if Ferrari still have not made any progress really on winning a championship compared to what they've done in the last 20 years, then at the end of the day, by that point, you cannot sit there and make any more excuses for Leclerc, because he's given Ferrari plenty of chances but also he has had plenty of chances to at least test the driver market and think about making a jump. Of course, Ferrari, winning a title for Ferrari means more. It does. It just does. There's no other team on the grid like it. But at what cost does Leclerc continue to, sacrifice his career? And I do think Leclerc, if he never wins a championship but stays at Ferrari for pretty much the rest of his career, he is going to go down as basically a new version of Jean Alesi or Gilles Villeneuve, where he's a beloved driver, supremely talented, very well liked and loved by the Tifosi, but never wins a championship for whatever reason. You don't want that to be your legacy. You want to have the legacy of a Raikkonen, or obviously everyone dreams of having the legacy of Michael Schumacher. So, if his contract is up at the end of 2030 or 2031, what I hope he does is he actually waits until that, he should at least wait until the year of his contract finishing to properly test the driver market if he hasn't won a championship by then at Ferrari. Because, if he really wants to win the championship, then at that point, if he still hasn't won it with Ferrari, mainly say because Ferrari have not produced a good enough car, then he needs to show that ambition. But if he continues to just sign contract extensions, then at that point you have to say that, and you could arguably already say it, that he's not serious about winning a championship. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Leclerc, of course, he's been with Ferrari, 7 years now? And by the time his contract ends, he would have been with the team probably, 11, 12 years? So you would hope he'd have at least one championship by then. But this is Ferrari. Their title drought has gone on about 20 years, just under. No reason why it couldn't continue. We've seen massive We've seen massive title droughts in sports before for big sports teams. Looking at football, obviously Liverpool had the league title drought of 30 years. Manchester United had a league title drought of 26 years, I think it was. Arsenal just broke their title drought of 22 years. So yeah, it's not impossible that the title drought for Ferrari could go on for at least another 10 years. It very well could. But anyway, cheers for your comments, guys. Keep them coming, as we've got just over 10 more minutes now until qualifying is underway. And before we get into qualifying, let me just do a quick roundup of the teams as we head into this session. So Mercedes looking close with McLaren, but the front row still has to be the aim, and I think still is realistic, given that if both drivers perform to their standard, I think that is definitely what is the maximum possibility. Mercedes, I still think have got the edge over McLaren. Both drivers, at their best, should be able to put on the front row. George Russell's looked great this weekend. Antonelli, not so great, but can he perform when it matters? He's been so good at that this year, and we'll see if he can do that in this session. But as long as they at least take pole position, then they are exactly where they need to be. But a front row lockout would be magnificent for the team, but it's definitely possible. Ferrari, unfortunately, not in the fight. They look to be fighting more for a third row grid slot. If they can lock out the third row of the grid, that would be realistically the best result they could get. They just don't have the pace of Mercedes or McLaren. And that is, unfortunately, despite all the upgrades they've brought, the best they can do. And the same really goes for Red Bull. Not really that competitive this weekend. Not as competitive as I expected. Watch out for Verstappen, though. We know he's great around this circuit. And Max, I think, definitely can still out-qualify the two Ferraris. But it's really, in that fight for the third and the fourth row of the grid, it is Red Bull versus Ferrari. It looks like Ferrari's got the slightly faster car, but it's close enough to where Red Bull can still upset the odds. And if any team is going to beat Mercedes today, it is going to be McLaren. They've looked quick right from the off. They've been super quick with both drivers, looking very good, especially through the high-speed corners here in Catalunya. And they are the only team that can take on and beat Mercedes. Will they beat Mercedes? I don't think they will. I just don't think they quite have enough pace, the drivers, to beat Antonelli and Russell, who I think are just that slight bit quicker and better when they hit their potential. But pole position is right there for them. If they get it, I don't think I'd be that surprised. They've took pole here the last 2 years, both drivers, so there's no reason why both drivers shouldn't be right at it. So yeah, McLaren, fingers crossed, will be, at least for tomorrow's race, on the front row. Audi, into the midfield we go now. Really, I think they should get a car into the top 10 if they actually maximise their potential. But as we've seen this year, that's not been something Audi have been doing a lot. We'll see if they can do it today. Bortoletto's looked quick. Hulkenberg's looked decently quick as well. Potential's there. When will they deliver on it? Haas are looking a tad better than they were in Monaco. Watch out for Oliver Behrman, who is still having a great season. But yeah, making the top 10, probably unrealistic. Racing Bulls have been the surprise team in the midfield, not just this weekend, but this season. They've been absolutely fantastic. And looking like they very well could get a car in the top 10. And if they do, both drivers nail their laps, they could end up getting both cars into the top 10, which would be absolutely fantastic for Lawson and Lindblad. Watch out for Racing Bulls. Alpine, not been good this weekend, but I do think they've got more potential that they've not quite showed yet. So watch out for them. And Pierre Gasly, who obviously in great form after his Monaco podium. Williams, I think they'll do well to get one car into Q2, to be honest. They just don't have a quick car this weekend. Aston Martin, still an absolute shower. They're even slower than Cadillac, who should, especially with Valtteri Bottas looking quicker this weekend, out-qualify both Aston Martins, and 19th and 20th really should be the aim for the Cadillac team. And here's a reminder of my top 10 prediction. Antonelli, I think, will take pole from Russell in second, and then Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Hadjar, Lawson and Bortoletto, I think, will be your top 10 in Spain. But we have got, guys, about 6 minutes to go until qualifying is underway. So let me just read out a couple more comments and then we'll get into this session. Will Cook says, when football teams taking 30 years, they compete against many more teams. It's not like they compete against 9 other teams, 6 of which are backmarkers. True. That is true. But, regardless of the, sample size, it's going on for as, going on a title drought for as long as Ferrari have, it is something that we do see, unfortunately. But, when will they break it? At this point, I don't know. Again, they've got the base of a really good car, but until they get that much improved engine, we can't talk about them as title contenders. We just can't. As the F1 intro now begins to play. Astro asking, has the gap between Mercedes and the others, especially McLaren, closed lately, Chaz? I reckon, and I hope it will. Hopefully here and then afterwards even more. McLaren are definitely closer now than they were at the start of the season. Red Bull are as well. Ferrari, to me, feel like they're just as far away, if not further away now than they were at the start of the season. But Red Bull and McLaren have improved, no doubt about it. McLaren are, probably half a second closer to Mercedes at least. And the Red Bull, you'd probably have to say as well, about half a second closer. So yeah, McLaren and Red Bull are the ones making the improvements. Ferrari brought a lot of upgrades this season, but they haven't got any closer to Mercedes, which again, we've talked about it so many times over the years. Ferrari in season development is not a quality of theirs. It's an area where they've really lost championships over the last few years because of it. But I think with 3.5 minutes to go until the session, I think we'll just get into final bits of information before we get into the session itself. And we'll look at the championship standings before we get into things. Kimi Antonelli, after winning and dominating the Monaco Grand Prix, is now 66 points clear of Lewis Hamilton, 68 points clear of his teammate George Russell. Leclerc in 4th, Piastri and Norris level on 58 points, with Piastri ahead in 5th. Norris 6th, Verstappen 7th, Gasly up to 8th and less than 10 points behind Max Verstappen. Who would have expected that after 6 races? Isaac Hadjar then in 9th and Liam Lawson in 10th. And on the constructors' side, Mercedes 80 points clear of Ferrari. McLaren quite far behind in 3rd, but if they could keep up their pace this weekend, might be able to close the gap. For Red Bull, then in 4th, quite far behind. McLaren, Alpine, less than 20 points behind in 5th. Racing Bull 6th, Haas 7th. Williams in 8th, nearly 10 points clear of Audi in 9th, who are only 1 point clear of Aston Martin 10th. With Cadillac last in the championship with 0 points. But here we go, guys. Qualifying is just a couple minutes away here in Catalonia. And the session, couple minutes away. 18-minute long session, of course. Q1, I'll think up the timer at the 17-minute mark for you guys. And of course, we knock out the 6 slowest drivers. 4 of the 6 drivers will be the 2 Cadillacs and the 2 Aston Martins. And really, the other 2 probably should be the Williams cars. Either them or maybe Ocon and the Haas. Those are the type of drivers you're looking at who should be eliminated in the first part of qualifying here. Of course, this is a race in Spain, but the Spanish drivers are having the worst season really possible. Alonso in the worst car on the grid and will be lucky to be even in the top 20. And for Carlos Sainz, he'll do well to even get into Q2. What a shame. 3 years ago, they had 2 Spaniards in the top 10 and one of them was on the front row in Carlos Sainz. Just shows you how times change in Formula 1. As Carlos Sainz is queued up in the pit lane, as the queue has formed, but the red light's still on as we're about 40 seconds away from getting underway. The first car at the end of the pit lane is Valtteri Bottas. The Cadillac. Bottas, of course, has took pole position here before. 7 years ago, he was on pole for the Spanish Grand Prix for Mercedes-Benz. As here we go. And qualifying is underway in Catalonia. It's a very hot day in Montmelo. Well over 30 degrees Celsius. Track temperature 50 plus. So the tyres will be cooking. And even on just one flying lap, the tyres giving up towards the end of the lap. So the drivers, obviously you want to push in qualifying, but they might have to actually manage the tyres to a degree so they don't overheat too much, because obviously you need to connect up all the sectors to have a great lap here. No point having a great first and second sector and then losing all the time in the final sector because your tyres are gone. But given how hot it is and, the nature of this circuit, and also given that Pirelli have brought, as there you go, 17 minutes to go in Q1. Given that Pirelli have brought a step softer compound of tyre this weekend compared to last year, that's why the tyres are so fragile. We're expecting possibly a 3-stop race tomorrow. As talking of tyres, Esteban Ocon is out on track on a set of medium tyres, so Haas looking to save tyres for the latter part of qualifying. Ocon, brilliant drive in Monaco, finished in 9th, but he's had a very poor weekend here. 16th in practice 1, 17th in practice 2, and 16th in practice 3. To be fair, Haas are not that quick this weekend, but still, he's been quite low down the order consistently. Ocon, despite that points finish in Monaco, it does feel like he is fighting for his Formula 1 career, especially after some reports came out, I think was it yesterday or a couple of days ago, that Ferrari are wanting Rafael Camara, who I believe is an F2. They want him in Formula 1, and possibly he might be going to the Haas team for next season, which, if Ocon can't improve his performances, is the right decision. When Ocon does get replaced, Haas need to look to the future, because Oliver Behrman, given how great he is not going to be at this team too much longer. So Haas have got to look to the future. As Ocon has been quicker than Behrman on this lap. Behrman is also on the mediums, as Valtteri Bottas goes quickest. But he is immediately replaced by Esteban Ocon, who does a 1:18.1. Teammate Behrman goes about a tenth slower to a 1:18.2. As Carlos Sainz now goes quickest on a 1:18.1. These, though, are quite slow lap times. The best lap time of the weekend is a 1:15.4. So, yeah, these are quite slow. These lap times, as Alex Albon is up to 4th place. As Fernando Alonso goes 6th. Let me just update that Valtteri Bottas is up to P5. And then, Alonso in 6th. Stroll in 7th. So already Cadillac ahead of Aston Martin. And by the way, hello to Super Kev. Good to see you as usual. As well, good to see Ewok. Another shout out to you. Obviously, as I said earlier, my 1000th video today. So yeah, shout out to you as well for the support over the years, and especially as of late. But the teams like Williams, you'd be expecting them, their best, say, qualifying times to be probably a very late 1:15 or a low 1:16. So we're at least a couple seconds away from, doing the best times really that they can do. Pole position today, by the way, the pole position time should be a mid 1:14. So in this session, I think as long as you do I'd say as long as you do a lap under 1 minute 16. So if you do a 1 minute 15 lap, even a 15.9, I think that should be good enough to get into Q2. So we will see quite big improvements in lap time as the session goes on, as all those cars who did laps have already come back in. And now out come the front runners, the Mercedes, the Ferraris, the McLarens, the Red Bulls. Esteban Ocon, by the way, in second, only half a tenth slower than Carlos Sainz, but of course Ocon, that was on a medium tyre, so yeah, a lot more pace in the Haas compared to the Williams. As we're looking at, I believe, Max Verstappen on the broadcast, who is starting his first qualifying run. Verstappen has only took pole here once, which was 2023, a weekend that he absolutely dominated. But despite only having one pole here, he has been very successful here. Remember, just to make a lot of you feel very old, including myself, it is the 10-year anniversary of Max Verstappen's first win here in Spain, here at this very track. 10 years ago. 10 years later, he sure has achieved a lot. Maybe even more by this point of his career than he expected. 4-time world champion and still clearly the best on the grid. As Max, a second and a half up on Carlos Sainz. This is a decent first lap from the Red Bull. As Hulkenberg goes quickest, but that's going to be very quickly beaten, that lap time of 1:16.9 by Max Verstappen, who does a 1:16.3, and that is, that's a good one. At least to get going. As Gasly has gone third. Let me just update firstly, though, that Hulkenberg is in second. Not anymore, because Charles Leclerc does a 1:15.9. That's a very good lap time to start qualifying. As this is Isaac Hadjar, bit of a toe to the line. He goes third. As Antonelli only goes second, interestingly. Lewis Hamilton is on a super lap further back, as George Russell now goes quickest with a brilliant lap, 1:15.7. But Lewis Hamilton, I think, might just go quickest here. To the line, he does by a tenth of a second at 1:15.6. That is a really strong start to the session by Ferrari. Were they holding back? We'll see as we go on. But Lewis Hamilton quickest on a 1:15.6. George Russell is in second And then it's Leclerc third, Antonelli, then in what do you call it? In fourth. And then Max Verstappen was in fifth place. It's now Lando Norris as the other McLaren of Oscar Piastri. Round the final corner, last year's pole sitter goes ahead of teammate Norris up to P5 as Oliver Bearman now does a proper lap on the soft tyre and goes 15th. As what am I doing? Trying to update the order, and I've picked the wrong driver then. Let me just update the two McLarens into their proper positions as Valtteri Bottas currently 19th and ahead of the Williams of Alexander Albon. Interestingly. Yeah, Piastri, let me just update him. He is in P5. So the front four teams have already took the top, 8 positions, or, most of the top 8 positions. You've got Arvid Lindblad in there in 8th place, as that is a Williams, presumably of Alex Albon. That's why he's quite slow, as is a replay of Stroll locking up and going deep at turn 10. The Aston Martin, a big problem with that car is they've got a locking issue related to the gearbox. When they come down the gearbox, the car, the rear end, the front end, they just lock up so much. So the drivers are not really driving a normal car. As Bortoletto we got in 10th. Liam Lawson is up in 11th, and then Hulkenberg 12th. Gasly is 13th. Colapinto is 14th. And then Oliver Bearman, we've got in 15th. Carlos Sainz 16th. Sergio Perez, what a lap he has done. He is currently up, Perez, in 17th place. If I can actually move him up the order. This is a glitch that I need to sort out on my end. Apologies for this. But yeah, Perez is actually ahead of Ocon, but for some reason on my system, it doesn't let me put Perez ahead of Ocon. Computer says no, unfortunately. But currently, Perez is ahead of Ocon in 17th, and then it's Bottas in 19th. If I could get it. There you go. And then Albon, Alonso, and Stroll. So the drop zone is Perez, Ocon, Bottas, Albon, Alonso, Stroll. Not really a surprising 6 that currently occupy the drop zone. And to be honest, looking at the field at the minute, Oliver Bearman in 15th is 0.7 of a second clear of Perez in 17th. So the only driver realistically who can get eliminated here is Carlos Sainz. So the top 10 really should just stay in the pits and save tyres. But it doesn't look like they're going to. But one thing to say is, so far, Ferrari looking very quick. 1:15.6. That is the by far the best pace they have done all weekend. As well, do not count out Lewis Hamilton around this circuit. He's always been superb here in Catalonia. Was on the podium here a couple years ago for Mercedes. As we're looking at, I think, Fernando Alonso coming out Aston Martin 21st and 22nd. I think that's the best they can do, but they're going to try. Maybe Alonso can drag it into 19th or 20th. How depressing. As we're looking here at Pierre Gasly, 13th. Alpine should be fine. Yeah, they're a second clear of the drop zone, are the Alpines. So, yeah, they are very comfortable, I think. Track evolution here can be big. So, that's probably why they're coming out, cover themselves. But, yeah, I think they've already done easily a good enough lap to get in. As Pierre Gasly starts his final lap of Q1. And does not improve his first sector. What does Colapinto do behind? Colapinto does improve his first sector, goes about a 10th quicker than Gasly did on that occasion. Alex Albon is on a final lap. Can he drag himself out of the drop zone? Very good first sector. 3/10 up on Sainz. As Pierre Gasly improves his middle sector. So does Colapinto. And yeah, both Alpines are probably going to pop this in the top 10. As Gasly flies through the final couple corners and comes to the line and does go up to 10th place. Where does teammate Colapinto go? As he now comes to the line, he now goes into 10th. So yeah, 10th and 11th, Alpine are fine. Here's Alex Albon. Much improved lap. Has he got himself in? For the moment, he has. Alex Albon up to 15th and pushes his teammate Carlos Sainz into 17th. Albon getting just about ahead of what do you call it? Of Behrman as Nico Hulkenberg improves massively up to P5. Oliver Behrman up to 11th, so he's through. As Ocon goes 16th, so Albon is out. As Alonso has been out-qualified by Stroll. What a disaster. As Sainz goes up to 16th, Bottas is ahead of Perez, but not anymore because Perez goes back ahead. So both Cadillacs out-qualifying both Aston Martins. And, well, there you go. That's Q1 over and done with. Pretty uneventful and pretty unsurprising as to who was eliminated. So let's go through the drivers who've made it through to the second part of qualifying. Hamilton, Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, Hulkenberg, Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, Lindblad, Hadjar, Behrman, Colapinto, Gasly, Bortoletto, Lawson and Sainz. And knocked out in Q1, Esteban Ocon, Alex Albon, Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas, Lance Stroll, and Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso, a man who has won this race twice, won this race 20 years ago. His last F1 win was here 13 years ago. Has qualified in last place. 22nd. Out-qualified even by Stroll. I don't think anyone can blame him if he does step away at the end of this season, which looks increasingly likely, especially if you listen to what he said in the press conference on Thursday, where he said this will probably be his last race here at the Circuit de Catalunya. And to be honest, I think he should retire because he's been punished enough for the choices he's made. It's time to step away. Because we'd rather remember him for who he was instead of, for what he's having to suffer currently. I feel bad for the poor soul who replaces him. But yeah, that's Q1 done with. And yeah, the people who are eliminating Q1, not a surprise. Albon's been awful and slow all weekend. Ocon, also awful and slow all weekend. Carlos Sainz making it through. And yeah, the top 15 were comfortably through. So quite worrying for Williams to be that far off the pace of the others. Sainz will do well not to end up in 16th place or in Q2. But yeah, we are in Q2 now. The front four teams should all easily make it through. We need to look at, though, of course, the front of the midfield. You've got Audi and Racing Bulls looking quick. Alpine looking a bit quicker than they were in practice. Behrman putting a very good lap at the end there. So yeah, we'll see who can make it into the top 10 and get into that top 10 shootout. Quick reminder, there is a poll running in the chat, guys. Let me know in that poll. Cast your vote. Who do you think takes pole position today in Spain? Will it be Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, Lando Norris, or Oscar Piastri? Out of those four, who are you going for? Personally, I'm going for Antonelli. But let me know your option. Rook's just saying in chat. Albon, half a second he was in Q1 behind Sainz. Yeah. To be fair, I don't think Alex has ever really been quick here, but yeah, that's considering how short the lap is, a minute and 15, minute and 16 lap, half a second off, that is not anywhere near good enough. Thing is, though, even if he was on the pace of Sainz or quicker, he'd be 16th. So does it really matter? I don't think it does. And Williams, James Vowles was sounding very defeated when he talked to Sky F1 earlier during practice 3, saying that this track sadly exposes their weaknesses to the nth degree. So yeah, this was expected, unfortunately for them. In regards to the race, they've got no chance of finishing in the points. They're going to end up probably they're going to end up a couple laps down, even probably by the end of the race. They're that far off the pace, which again is sad because last year they were the best midfield team. Not only were they the best midfield team, there was quite a few races where they were part of that front running crew. Obviously had a couple podiums, did Williams last year, but they have massively got it wrong with this year's car. But still, I don't think we should give up on Williams. There's still a lot of time to improve. These regulations are going to be in place probably for a good while. So, there's plenty of time to improve. They're still quite overweight from what we're hearing. So, once they shed that weight, they should be at least, half a second quicker. Once that weight's gone, maybe even more. So, give Williams time, and they will improve. I've no doubt about it. They're a good team. Got it wrong over the winter. Certain teams do. You don't always have a perfect winter in Formula One in terms of developing your new car, but I'm confident they'll get it right and they'll be competitive pretty soon. More likely, though, to be honest, next season. I think that's what Williams have got to look at. Because if they if they can make a couple good steps development-wise this year, and then, focus really on next year's car once they've understood why this year's car is the way it is and why it's bad, I don't see why they can't be back to being a regular top 10 runner next season, especially given that they have a Mercedes power unit. As Q2 is underway, we're about nearly half a minute in. I will sync up the timer at the 14-minute mark. But nobody going out on track just yet. And the reason that is again, because you can only do on these tyres one lap. There's no extra warm-up lap or, 2 flying laps. You can't do that. One lap and that's it. And there you go. 14 minutes remain in the second part of qualifying. Looney Classics earlier in the chat saying hindsight is 2020. Alonso chose Aston Martin because they were on the up. That's the thing though with Alonso, is the choices he has made at the time. If you go look at his entire Formula One career, every time he's made the choice to go to a certain team, maybe except for McLaren in 2015, when he made that choice at that particular time, it was a good decision. But it turned out to be a bad decision. So a lot of the time you can't really blame him, because, if a team is currently good, especially a team like a Ferrari or an Aston Martin who has a lot of money at their disposal, you expect they will maintain that level of performance. But Alonso, unfortunately, he joined Ferrari right as their drought began and as the dip after the glory years began. So, obviously, it's been talked about plenty of times. He had the chance to join Red Bull and he said no. You can understand why he said no, because nobody thought Red Bull were going to win championships. Even with Adrian Newey at their team, nobody thought they were going to win championships. I don't care who you are. If you were watching F1 back then, there is no way you thought Red Bull were going to win championships. It was very much McLaren versus Ferrari back then. Those were the only two teams I think really considered as actual championship material, and maybe BMW to an extent. But yeah, those were the two teams to be in at the time. That's the way it was viewed back then, and that's why he decided to go to Ferrari for 2010. As finally, cars on track, but they're all going pretty slowly out of the pit lane as they're trying to keep their tyres as cool as possible, whilst also giving themselves plenty of space in front of them so they're not held up on their flying laps. But the quickest time in Q1 was 1:15.6, so still not as quick as yesterday's 1:15.4 in practice too. So we should be doing the best lap time of the weekend in this second part of qualifying. So should be the quickest time in this session, should be a low 1:15. To get into Q3, as long as you do a 1:15, then you will get through. But I think the slowest lap time I can see making it in is probably a 1:16.2, maybe a 1:16.3. As still slowly the cars come out of the pit lane, as in the background there is a Alpine, yep, or Pierre Gasly flying down the main straight into turn 1 and 2. Gasly last 2 or 3 years here, he's had some decent results. Was it 2024? I think he finished, was it 8th here? I seem to remember. So, yeah, he's got decent pace here before. As Gasly coming through turn 9, which is not quite as easy as it used to be a few years ago. I also remember Pierre did actually qualify 4th here 3 years ago, but started 10th because he had 2 3-place penalties for impeding. As Pierre Gasly rounds the final 2 corners. And what's the lap time? It's a 1:17.6, which is pretty slow. You'd think, though, that these first laps are going to be done on used tyres so that they can save the tyres for later. As Colapinto now goes quickest. Hulkenberg replaces him at the top with a 1:16.9. As here is Max Verstappen. What's his first time of the session? 1:15.4. That is a lot more like it. That's a good lap time there from Max Verstappen. As Arvid Lindblad has a 1:15.8. That's fantastic from the young Brit, and that surely gets him into Q3 already. Lawson goes third at 1:16.1. Very good time from him as well. But what a lap by Lindblad. He was having a great weekend. Isaac Hadjar, second. 1:15.7. As Leclerc goes quickest on a 1:15.2. Quickest lap time of the weekend so far. Ferrari is showing a lot more pace here. As Antonelli goes second. About 100th of a second or so behind Leclerc. Very close. But yeah, Ferrari, much more competitive looking than I expected so far. As Russell now goes quickest by 0.5 And George Russell is in P1 as Lewis Hamilton goes 4th, only a couple tenths down on Russell. Piastri only 9th. I hope that's because of a mistake or old tyres. As Behrman goes 12th. This is Lando Norris. As Nico Hulkenberg's time has been deleted for a track limit violation. Norris only 8th. So yeah, McLaren I think have gone out there on used tyres. But your current top 10 is Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, Hamilton, Verstappen, Hadjar, Lindblad, Norris, Lawson and Piastri. And then the drop zone, it's Bortoletto 11th, Colapinto 12th, Behrman 13th, Gasly 14th, Sainz 15th, and Hulkenberg hasn't done a lap time and he's in 16th. Mercedes at the top, not a surprise there, but again, Ferrari a lot stronger than we expected. And this is very good to see. Very, very good to see. But if McLaren have gone out on used tyres, and keep your eye out because McLaren should improve a lot if they do another run. Lando Norris did a 1:16.0. So yeah, McLaren have got a lot more pace in the bag as well. It is building up nicely, this qualifying session. As all the cars come back into the pits again. Only one lap you can do on these tyres. As we're looking at Leclerc in the garage, currently in P2. Leclerc, of course, has taken pole position here before. 4 years ago in 2022. What a pole it was. It was a crazy Q3. He spun on his first lap and then went and smashed in a pole position lap on the final lap. And was going to win the race. easily until his engine and his team let him down. As that's a replay of Lando Norris on his flying lap, which again I really hope was on old tyres. But also, good lap from Max Verstappen as well, in a quarter of a second off. So it really is, this qualifying session, it's really shaping up nicely. And I think we are heading towards a much closer Q3 than expected through the top 10, really. Because even Racing Bulls look very good. Arvid Lindblad, 7th, 6/10 off only. 3.5 tenths quicker than Lindblad and Lawson. So what a lap that was. And yeah, Racing Bulls, with Lindblad, I don't think need to go out again. Lindblad is 8/10 of a second quicker than Bortoletto in 11th. So yeah, Lindblad I think is safe. So really, I think they should just save set of tyres and keep them in the pits. But do they feel brave enough to do such a thing? But here we go. Cars back out on track. Both McLarens back out, of course, to do proper laps on fresh tyres. But to be honest, looking at the lap times, I don't think anyone in the drop zone is going to be able to get into the top 10. The two Racing Bulls look very quick. And too quick at the minute, unless Audi have got way more pace to show. What season Racing Bulls are having. I remember at the start of the season, I had Racing Bulls, even after testing, finishing like 8th or 9th in the championship. Before the season, I thought they would be like 9th or even 10th in the championship. But yeah, currently in 6th, and they get both cars in the top 10. Very well could score even more points. As here comes Oscar Piastri on his second Q2 run. Last year's pole sitter. Dominated, quite frankly, this Grand Prix a year ago. As Piastri, much better first sector. And about 0.5 tenth quicker than his teammate Norris. As Piastri flies through turn number 9. Now into turn 10. And the McLaren looking very well balanced, front to rear. Definitely hooked up to the track this weekend. As Piastri through the final 2 corners. What is the improvement? Piastri goes 6th, only 3/10 off the pace. Lando Norris goes 4th, only 1.5 off. So there you go. McLaren have got very good pace. As here is Carlos Sainz. What can he do? He stays in 15th. Unless Hulkenberg messes up his final lap, I think Sainz will surely end up 16th. But yeah, both McLarens comfortably through now, as both Mercedes, both Ferrari, and both Red Bull cars are still in the pits, because obviously they've done good enough times to get through. Really big field spread between the front running teams in the midfield. Unfortunate, but it's what you get with new regulations. As time goes on, it will close up. We know that. As Nico Hulkenberg's done a very good lap so far, but can he get into the top 10? Liam Lawson goes up to 8th. Here's Hulkenberg. He's pushing for all his worth. And he does go up to 10th. What a lap. And puts Lindblad now in the drop zone, who's in the pits. They thought he was safe, and to be fair, I thought he was safe, but Lindblad is out. What a lap by Nico Hulkenberg to get in the top 10. I was sure that Lindblad was safe, but that is a stonking lap from Hulkenberg as Gasly goes 13th. Here's Franco Colapinto to the line. Goes ahead of Gasly. Congrats. He outqualifies Gasly. That's a very good performance there. 3 out of the last 4 races now. Colapinto has outqualified his teammate. Having a good season now is the Argentine. But what a lap by Hulkenberg, who, remember, hasn't scored a point this season. But that is Q2 over and done with. Let's go through the drivers that are going into the top 10 shootout. George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, Liam Lawson continuing his great season, Isaac Hadjar, and what a brilliant job by Nico Hulkenberg to get into the top 10. And knocked out in Q2, Arvid Lindblad, Gabriel Bortoleto, Franco Colapinto, Pierre Gasly, Oliver Behrman, and Carlos Sainz. And now it's all about the shootout of the top 10. And honestly, I think we are going to have a very, very close competitive final 13 minutes of qualifying coming up in a few minutes. Again, shout out Hulkenberg. Lindblad obviously was disappointed to end up in P11, but I think they made the right decision at the time to keep Lindblad in the pits to try and save tyres, because that lap, it seemed good enough, but then Hulkenberg went and put in a donker of a lap. Remember though, Lindblad has now saved a set of tyres for tomorrow's race, which could be very, very important for him. So that could still play well for him and maybe allow him to get into the points anyway and beat Hulkenberg. So Hulkenberg may have won the battle, but not sure he'll win the war. Bortoleto 12th. Best he could do, really. Hulkenberg just quicker in this session. Again, congrats to Colapinto. Doing the best he can. Gasly 14th. Behrman 15th. Haas will be disappointed again, but they've really gone backwards since their upgrades at the Miami Grand Prix failed. And yeah, Carlos Sainz 16th, which we all expected. But yeah, Q3, that's what it's all about now. And can Mercedes take pole ahead of a very close field? Ferrari look very good. Red Bull looking a bit better. And McLaren still looking pretty quick as well. But before we get into Q3, let me finish up the poll in the chat, which has been running for a few hours now. And I asked you guys who will take pole position today in Spain. Just over 500 votes. Thank you guys so much for voting. And with 519 votes in total, 55% of the vote has gone to Kimi Antonelli, the man who took pole a week ago in Monaco. 29% of you gone for George Russell, 9% for Lando Norris, and 7% for Oscar Piastri. Well, in the next 15 minutes, we are going to find out who takes pole position for the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix. And for George Russell, if he is to mount any sort of comeback in this championship, it must start here. Like I said in my video that I did on the two Mercedes drivers, a couple of weeks ago. Monaco, not a great track for Russell, but this always has been. This is where the fight back really needs to start. If he can take pole here and win tomorrow, then he can start to develop, hopefully for him, some momentum and close the gap down. But can he deliver under pressure? Remember with Russell, as I said in that video that I did of the Mercedes drivers, qualifying is really what determines if he has a good weekend or not, because he never really seems to improve on whatever he does in qualifying in the race, when other drivers like Verstappen and Hamilton, Leclerc even, tend to, be able to improve quite a bit no matter where they qualify. Qualifying is what makes George Russell's, great results over the years. And the only great result he can get this weekend is the win. So he's got to get pole. If he doesn't get pole, I don't think he wins this race. As it is the calm before the storm hits the track. As we look at Max Verstappen in his garage. Verstappen here last year was third on the grid. The year before, second. The year before that, he was on pole. There are the two Ferraris. Both Ferrari drivers have taken pole here. Actually, quite a lot of the drivers in the top 10 have took pole position at this track before, except for, of course, Lawson and Hulkenberg. But also, the two Mercedes drivers have never taken pole position at this circuit. Hamilton has, Leclerc has, Norris has, Piastri has, Verstappen has. But the two Mercedes drivers have not. Will that give the two Ferrari drivers, the two McLaren drivers, and Max Verstappen an edge? We'll see. As qualifying 3 is underway, but no cars yet on track, as of course they will want to wait for the perfect time to go out. And it will be just 1 lap per set. The front runners have saved enough tyres to be able to do 2 runs. Lawson and Hulkenberg will probably only do 1 run, I would imagine, because they probably used probably a set more tyres than the front runners have. As still we wait for a car to enter the circuit, enter the arena. As it looks like McLaren are about to release the World Drivers' Champion, Lando Norris. Can McLaren really get their season going and deliver pole position? As Max Verstappen heads out onto circuit. And out comes Oscar Piastri. But the fastest lap time, of course, in Q2 was a 1:15.2. I'm expecting pole position to still be a mid 1:14, probably on the latter side of a mid 1:14, a 1:14.6 probably. So we'll see with these first runs who is able to get close to that. If you, with your first run, if you get into the 1:14s, you are in serious business. As I've just remembered that I forgot to sync the timer up, so apologies about that. I will do it in about 30 seconds time. I'll sync it up at the 10-minute mark, as we've still got cars coming out of the garage. And now we look at Max Verstappen. Max said that the upgrades to the chassis would be a good test to see if the Red Bull has improved in the high-speed corners, and this next 10 minutes will be a great test to see if Red Bull have improved. As we look at Oscar Piastri starting his lap, but now we look at Max Verstappen. What can Max do? As he comes through turn 1, 2, and 3. Passes the slow Mercedes there on its outlap. 21.9 for the first sector. That is a good start. But not as good as Piastri, who goes nearly a tenth quicker. Lando Norris goes quicker than Verstappen in the first sector, but still slower than teammate Piastri by a couple hundredths of a second. Verstappen flies through turn 9. Ran slightly wide. He does a purple middle sector as the Mercedes there kind of getting in the way slightly. But Verstappen does a better middle sector than Piastri. It's a good lap, but is it good enough? As a yellow flag out there. Verstappen to the line. And he does a 1:15.3 as Leclerc has gone off the track. We've got a yellow flag for Leclerc off the track and a red flag as Piastri goes quickest on a 1:15.1. We're not seeing Leclerc's car. Oh, he's binned it. Leclerc has binned it just like he did in Monaco. Red flag with 8.5 minutes to go in qualifying. What are you doing, Charles? He's complained about his brakes, but he's on the same brakes as Lewis, and surely that's not what's caused this. It looks like it's on the exit of turn 4. He's probably either gone too wide, gone too deep, or he's gotten the throttle too early out of turn 4 and spun. Is a replay into turn 4. And yeah, he lost the rear end a bit and then got on the throttle too early and the car the rear end went round. Just a slight bit too trigger happy on the throttle and then front wing in. Session over. And really weekend over in terms of being able to get a good result. He will be 10th. At best. Ferrari look like they could potentially be in the fight for pole, and, well, one of their drivers has just thrown it away. And again, like I said in my podcast after the Monaco Grand Prix, and I really get the feeling again, watching that, with these type of accidents, it just makes me doubt even more whether Leclerc actually is good enough to win a world championship. Because you can moan all you want about Ferrari not producing a good enough car, but at the end of the day, it's your job as a driver to get the best out of the car. And Leclerc, 2 weekends in a row, has had a great chance at a great track position. Obviously, in Monaco, he had a great chance at pole and threw it away. And maybe, you don't know, had a great chance at pole position here. And he has thrown it away again. Just not good enough, I'm afraid. As this red flag, you'd imagine, will be probably out for another 5 minutes or so to recover the car and clear up any debris, as well as the tractor comes out to recover Leclerc's Ferrari. And yeah, if you look at the replay, they'll probably show another replay of it in a moment. He, met the apex fine, but he just got a slight bit of oversteer on the exit, and then instead of waiting for the oversteer to correct, or waiting for himself to correct the oversteer before getting right back on the throttle. He just got on it too early. Rooks asking, time for 2 runs remaining, Chaz? Should be. Thing is, though, is a lot of the drivers who haven't set a lap time were already out there on laps or on out laps, so they would have already had some mileage on those tyres. So what do? Do they wait until the final 3 minutes and go for 1 run at the end? Or do they bang a lap in, say, straight away, and then quickly get back in, fill up, and go back out again? I think with 8.5 minutes to go, I think there isn't enough time to do that, unfortunately. So I think what's going to happen is the front runners, I think, will stay in the pits until about 3.5, 4 minutes to go, because I think it's a risk to still try get 2 runs in. And that is, as you say, Rook, that's an advantage for Piastri and Verstappen because they've got the only times on the board so far. So, and also they've got more confidence because they would have already got out there and got laps in. The Mercedes drivers didn't even start their laps. Lando Norris was close to finishing his lap, but then had to pit for the red flag. And I don't think Lawson or Hulkenberg even came out. So, yeah, it'll be just 1 run left, I think, for everyone left in this session. But yeah, so disappointing from Leclerc. As his car is towed away by the tractor. Behind the barrier is a replay. So yeah, it meets the apex fine, but just gets a slight bit of oversteer, and instead of waiting for it to correct itself, he just gets on the throttle too aggressively, spins the rear round, tries to correct it, and ends up going in frontwards towards the barrier and smashes the car to bits. Poor error for a driver of his quality. As a sign or a sign pretty much in the crowd saying make your move now, Hammy. But no message as of yet as to when the session will resume. I think the teams have just received, though, the message because they are suddenly now getting the cars ready. As Leclerc's car now pulled behind the gap in the barrier. And we just wait to see, hopefully, a message of when the session will resume. We haven't had a message as of yet. As Karun Chandok on the Sky F1 Skypad is just doing a side-by-side comparison of Leclerc, of his accident and what he did previously. And I think what Karun, if he's showing the correct, yeah, he is. I think what the point Karun I think is making on the Skypad, just visually from watching it, is that Leclerc not quite as tight to the inside of the track on the exit of turn 4 as he was previously. That is true. He is a bit wider, but if Leclerc had just lifted just enough for that oversteer to correct itself, he would have been fine. But Leclerc just got on the throttle too hard, too early. Didn't allow the car a chance to correct itself. And ended up in the barriers. But yeah, we still wait. Rooks has just posted that qualifying will resume at 17:03 local, which for us is in just over 2 minutes time. So there is 8 minutes and 30 seconds left in the session, and we have got cars parked up at the exit of the pits. So they're going to go for it, but they're going to have to very quickly get back in the pits and get, refueled if they want another run. And again, this does give Piastri and Verstappen an advantage because they've done their first run as they usually would. And now they can just wait until the end. So we'll see how it all plays out as we're just over 1 more minute away from the resumption of this session. As the crowd anticipating a good fight here for pole, which it should be. But that crash and the timing of it does throw things up in the air a bit. As Lando Norris is still in his garage at the minute, as the green light will go on at the end of the pit lane in about 20 seconds time. And here we go. We are back underway for the final 8 minutes and now 15 seconds of qualifying. As they just displayed on the screen that Russell has got 2 new sets of soft tyres left. And I will sync up the timer in 3, 2, 1. There you go. 8 minutes to go in qualifying. As Rook's saying in chat, very important information. That Antonelli, Hadjar, and Russell on used tyres. By the way, Astro, Leclerc's out of the session. He broke not just the front of the car, but the suspension and all of it. So yeah, he's out of the session. He will not be taking any further part. And like I said, he'll end up starting from 10th. As we now look at, that was a Mercedes thing of Antonelli we were looking at. Now we're looking at his teammate George Russell. And yeah, Russell in these final 7 minutes, he's got to perform and deliver pole if he's got any hope of a championship comeback. Here is, though, the championship leader, the youngest championship leader in Formula One history. And the man dominating 2026, Kimi Antonelli. And this is his first attempt at pole in Barcelona. Smooth run so far up to the first sector. Nearly 2/10 down, though, on Piastri. That's, I know he's on used tyres, but I wasn't expecting him to be that far off. As Russell's been given a black and white flag for driving unnecessarily slowly. As Russell does a much better first sector than Antonelli. Antonelli into the middle sector, only just slower than Piastri by 100th or so. And if he is on used tyres, then this is a pretty good lap. As he rounds the final corner, where does the championship leader go? He goes third, 2/10 down on Piastri. Russell, though, purple middle sector, 2/10 up on Oscar Piastri as Hadjar goes fourth. As Hamilton is on a lap, he's 2/10 down after the first two sectors. Here comes George Russell onto pole by 0.03 of a second, and given that he's on used tyres, that is a brilliant lap by George Russell. Lewis Hamilton only 6th. But it is Russell currently on provisional pole, 1:15.1. On fresh tyres, I think Russell could probably do a 1:14.6. Maybe even a 1:14.5. But what are Mercedes going to do? Have they filled up the car with enough fuel to come in and just do a pit stop and release the two cars out again? Because really, that's what they need to do. Because we've got 4 minutes and 15 seconds to go. I'm not sure Mercedes have got enough time to get in and refill the cars with fuel in the garage. So, are they going to do a racing pit stop? As Antonelli comes into the pits. As Lando Norris is about to be released from the garage, and Isaac Hadjar is being wheeled back into his garage. I think Antonelli has done a racing pit stop. So yeah, that's what Mercedes are doing. It's the smart and the right decision. Very smart and good decision there. Fill the cars up with enough fuel for the rest of the session, and then just do a pit stop onto the fresh tyres to make sure they get 2 runs in. Very good there from Mercedes. As the 2 McLarens have been released. And Lawson and Hulkenberg are going to come out as well. Obviously, they've only got 1 set of tyres left. And presumably, Lewis Hamilton will come out again. But is he going to do a racing pit stop, or are they going to wheel it back into the garage? If that's the best Hamilton can do, then Ferrari are in big trouble. Because if Hamilton can't improve, Ferrari are going to end up 8th and 10th, or 7th and 10th. And nope, Hamilton is coming out, thankfully. Good news for the Ferrari fans. So here we go. This is what it's all about. This is one of the most important pole positions of the year, historically speaking. If you take pole here, you have an almost certain chance of winning at the Circuit de Catalunya. But who will take pole? We are about to find out. As Antonelli rounds the final corner. One chance to go. Can he take that chance? As Antonelli blasting down to turn 1. Through turn 2. And looks good from the Italian. What's the first sector like? It's good. 600ths up on Russell. But Russell, of course, he's out there on a lap. And Russell does a purple first sector, but only 300ths quicker than Antonelli, so it's close. As Norris doesn't improve his first sector, but it's still a good first sector. Through turn 9. Flat now down to turn 10. Antonelli to the purple middle sector. Nearly 2/10 up on Russell. He's giving it everything he's got, Kimi. But will it be enough? I'm not sure it will, as Russell, an even better middle sector. But here comes Antonelli. Where will he go? The pole is where he goes. For the moment, a 10.5 up on Russell. But here comes George Russell. He's been the quickest man on his lap so far. To the line. Oh, what a lap. 1:14.6. 3/10 quicker than Antonelli. And he's on provisional pole. Norris goes third. Piastri 2/10 down after the first 2 sectors. Verstappen is only 0.5 down on Russell after 2 sectors. Can Max do the unthinkable? As Piastri to the line, stays in 4th. He's been out qualified by Norris. Here comes Max Verstappen. Only 4th. He gave it all away in the final sector. The tyres just wouldn't live with him. But Hamilton is in a purple middle sector. What can he do? As Hadjar gets ahead of Piastri. Here comes Lewis Hamilton. 2nd. Oh, so close to pole. 600ths of a second away. And Ferrari split the Mercedes on the front row. And that just proves yet again why that is such a big mistake from Leclerc earlier. Because they could have took pole today. But in the end, they didn't. It was Mr. Saturday who took pole. George Russell with a 1:14.6. Congratulations to him. That was a brilliant lap. 3/10 quicker than Antonelli. Just too good for the rest of the field. And it had to be that good because Hamilton was so quick there at the end. George Russell on pole. Lewis Hamilton second. An all-British front row. Hamilton, that's the best qualifying result he's had in quite a long time. Antonelli third. Norris fourth. Verstappen fifth. Hadjar sixth. Piastri down in 7th, and we disappointed a lot with that. Lawson 8th, Hulkenberg 9th, Leclerc P10. He will be absolutely miserable knowing that he could have had pole. And then the rest of your field, Arvid Lindblad 11th, Bortoletto 12th, Colapinto 13th, Gasly 14th, Behrman 15th, Sainz in 16th, and then Ocon, Albon, Perez, Bottas, Stroll, and Alonso will round out your field for tomorrow's Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix. And as Astro just said in the chat, Russell badly needed that. He did. And thankfully for him, he's got a car in between him and his teammate. But let me just ask you guys, who is your driver of the day for qualifying in Spain? For me, driver of the day, I think I'm going to go Lewis Hamilton. Because to get that close to the Mercedes with a car that is, definitely not got as much power, that's a fantastic lap from Hamilton. Absolutely brilliant. And if they can look after their tyres well, which is going to be very important tomorrow. We could have a 3-stop race tomorrow. You never know. Lewis Hamilton could win this race. Not impossible. Yeah, Russell, Hamilton. I'll put Norris in there, and I'll put Hulkenberg in there. Actually, no, I'm going to put Isaac Hadjar in there because Rooks has just notified in the chat that Isaac Hadjar was half a 100th slower than Max Verstappen. Super lap by Hadjar. 3rd row of the grid for Red Bull. That is realistically, I think, the best they could have done. But, yeah, that was a lot closer of a Q3 than I was expecting today. And hopefully we'll get some different strategies and all of that in tomorrow's race and get at least an interesting race when it comes to tyres. Oh, Rook saying half a tenth. Right. I'm looking now and yeah, half a tenth. But again, as I said, I think a week ago when I was talking about Isaac Hadjar's season, that's why Hadjar's doing so well as the number 2 driver is because he's so good in qualifying. And, you know, he's keeping Max honest to a degree, but he's also, you know, that's why he's getting these good results because he's getting the positions in qualifying and then, you know, holding on to them in the race. So in the race tomorrow, I could see him getting a top 6, maybe even a top 5 if things go their way. Astra saying good enough to do a race watch along, please, Chaz. Nah, I can't. I can't. Especially since I'm going to be up until 7 a.m. And it's, what, 4 p.m. now? Yeah, because we've got 4 World Cup matches on its way later, and I'm going to be watching all 4. And including, of course, the Australia game, which kicks off at 5 a.m. here in the UK tomorrow morning. So, yeah. I hope you guys enjoy the race. Hopefully it's a bit better than I'm expecting. I think it will be very tyre dominated and a bit of a procession, to be honest. Because I think the drivers are going to be really just managing tyres all the time. But hopefully it's better than you know, than I expect. Lunar Classics says Max also had a super lap. He's being hindered by the car. Well, Hadjar, he also had a super lap. But yeah, Red Bull, 3/10 off pole. That, I mean, to be fair, that is about the gap I thought it would be coming into the weekend. But I thought Red Bull would be ahead of Ferrari and McLaren, to be honest. So the gap between them and Mercedes is fine. It's just that McLaren and Ferrari are ahead of them. That's the issue. So, yeah. But, you know, the Red Bull, the pace is good. They're improving all the time. And I'm telling you, next Grand Prix in Austria, their home race, they've got a big upgrade coming at that race, which is going to reduce the weight of the car. So that would give them probably an extra couple tenths at least. And that Red Bull Ring circuit definitely is better for the Red Bull car. I'm telling you, watch out for the next race. I think Max, I think he could win the next race, dare I say, in Austria. Very much looking forward to that one. And as Rook said in the chat, we've lost him to the Football World Cup. You have, unfortunately. But I will be doing a race watch along for the next Grand Prix in Austria in 2 weeks. So don't worry. There will be a race watch along coming very soon in 2 weeks from the Red Bull Ring. And yeah, I'll be doing both a quali and race watch along. And I'm very much looking forward to that weekend. I think, given how close it was here in quali, should be very close in Austria. Looney Classic says I'm not so confident about Leclerc beating Lewis this year. As the races go on, Hamilton is just getting better and better, and Leclerc is just going the other way. So, yeah, if it continues in this way, then Hamilton should end up beating Leclerc, really. But I'll wait until the poll gets up to, say, 50 votes, and then we'll finish the poll there. Let me just read out a final couple comments, so. Let me just scroll up a bit. Todd, good to see you. By the way, shout out to you. Says, so we're back to Super Clip Sundays. Not quite. The super clipping is pretty much gone. I mean, it is still there to a degree, but the FIA announced, I think it was earlier this week, that from next year on, the power generated from the ICE and the power generated from the electrical boost will be changing next year. So there'll be the power delivered through the engine will be mostly now from the ICE rather than the 50-50 split, which is why we've had the super clipping, because the ICE, runs out of power, and then, that's why you had the clipping and the dropping of speed. Next year, that will not be an issue, pretty much. But it's already a lot better, thankfully. But I think we'll finish up the poll. I'm not sure it's got quite to 50 votes. I think it's on, 49 votes. But I asked you guys, who is driver of the day for qualifying in Spain? And 57% of you went for Lewis Hamilton, and I agree. He was driver of the day. 35% for Russell, 8% for Hadjar, 0% for Lando Norris. Oh, well. But thank you guys so much for coming along to this qualifying watch along. Again, 1000th video today. Massive thank you to all of you who have supported me over the years. And here's to the next 1000 videos. As I said, I won't be doing a race watch along tomorrow, but I will be doing a podcast on Monday to review whatever happens in tomorrow's race. In regards to the next race, so in Austria, I will be doing both a qualifying and race watch-along for that Grand Prix. So don't worry, race watch-alongs are coming back. Make sure to join us for that weekend at the Red Bull Ring. Cannot wait for it. But yeah, thanks to you guys joining us today. Make sure to, before you go, to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Make sure to smash the like button as well. Obviously does help show me you guys enjoy the content. It helps in the algorithm. And yeah, thank you guys so much for coming along for this qualifying session in Spain. A good one, not as good as Monaco, but still a good one. And hopefully tomorrow's race will be a good one as well. But guys, until my podcast on Monday, and until the next Grand Prix in Austria, hope you guys enjoy the Grand Prix tomorrow. And if you are like me watching the World Cup, hope you're enjoying it as much as I am at the minute. And until my next stream in 2 weeks and my next video on Monday, it has been me, Shazza HD. Goodbye.